Hey everyone, welcome! You know, one of the coolest things about economics is how it can explain the world, a world that we all live in. So today, we're going to tackle one of the biggest questions out there, something that affects every single one of us. Why do you get paid what you get paid?
So let's just dive right in. What is it that truly decides your salary? I mean, is it how hard you work? The degree you have? The field you're in? Maybe it's something else completely. Well, what we're going to find out is that the economic answer is actually surprisingly simple. It really just boils down to a couple of key ideas.
All right, so here's the game plan for today. We're going to start with the basics, what economists call the factors of production. Then we'll look at how a company decides who to hire. After that, we'll flip it and look at the supply of labor. Then we'll put it all together to see how the market works. And finally, we'll connect this to other things like land and capital. Sound good? Let's go.
Okay, Section 1. What are these factors of production? Really, they're just the basic building blocks of our entire economy. Before we can figure out the price of anything, and that includes your own work, we have to understand what goes into making stuff in the first place.
So, economists like to keep things simple, and they've sorted all these inputs into three big buckets. First, you've got labor. That's pretty straightforward. It's the work people do. Second, there's land, which is basically all the natural resources. And third, we have capital. Now listen up because this is important. In economics, capital doesn't just mean money. It means the tools, the machines, the buildings, all the stuff we use to produce other stuff. And this leads us to a really important idea called derived demand. Think about it like this. A company, let's say a big tech giant, doesn't just hire software engineers for fun. No way. They hire them because you and I want to buy their new smartphone or use their app. The company's demand for that engineer is derived from our demand for the thing they make. It's a chain reaction. All right, let's bring this down to earth. Forget giant corporations for a second. We're going to look at a super simple business, Xavier's popcorn truck. This little story is going to show us exactly how a smart business owner thinks when they're deciding, should I hire another person?
Okay, check out these numbers for Xavier's truck. With no workers, obviously no popcorn, he hires one person and boom, they make 30 buckets. He hires a second person and now they're making 55 buckets in total. But wait a second, are you seeing what I'm seeing? The total amount of popcorn is going up, for sure, but the extra amount each new worker adds, that's actually going down.
And that pattern has a fancy name, diminishing marginal product of labor, or MPL for short. See, that first worker added 30 buckets. The second one, they only added 25 more. The third adds 20. It's literally the too many cooks in the kitchen problem. At some point, people start bumping into each other, and each new person just isn't as productive as the last one was.
So if you're Xavier, you're not just thinking about buckets of popcorn, you're thinking about money, right? So he has to figure out how much each worker is worth in dollars and cents. And the way he does that is by calculating something called the value of the marginal product of labor, or VMPL. It sounds complicated, but it's not. He just takes the number of extra buckets each worker makes, that's their MPL, and multiplies it by the price of a bucket of popcorn, which is $5. So that first worker, they bring in a cool $150 in value. The second one, $125. And you can see how it goes down from there.
All right, here we go. This is the moment of truth. Let's say the market wage for a good popcorn maker is $90 a day. Now, you be the boss. Look at this table. To make the most profit, how many workers should Xavier actually hire? Think about it.
And the answer lies in this simple golden rule of hiring. A smart company will keep hiring people right up to the point where the value they bring in, their VMPL, is equal to what they cost, their wage. So let's see. Worker number 3 brings in $100 of value and costs $90. That's a good deal. Hire them. But what about worker number 4? They only bring in $75 of value but cost $90 to hire. Uh-oh. Hiring them would actually lose Xavier money. So he stops at 3 workers. It's just that simple.
So that VMPL curve, that's basically the company's demand curve for labor. Pretty cool, huh? But that's just one side of the coin. Now we've got to talk about the other side of the market, the supply of labor.
Yeah, the number of people available to work a certain job isn't set in stone. It can change for all sorts of reasons. You've got big social shifts, like when more women started entering the workforce a few decades ago, that massively increased the supply of labor. You also have changes in other job opportunities, like if a new Amazon warehouse opens up across town offering great pay, suddenly the supply of workers for Xavier's popcorn truck is going to shrink, right? And of course, immigration is a direct way that the supply of labor in a country can go up.
Okay, so we've got demand from the companies and we've got supply from the workers. Let's do what economists love to do, smash them together on a graph and see where the magic happens.
And here it is. The market settles at a balance point, what we call equilibrium, right where those two lines cross. And this, my friends, is the big reveal. This is the whole point. In a competitive market, the wage that people get paid naturally adjusts until it's equal to the value of what that last worker hired produces, the VMPL. In other words, your pay is fundamentally linked to the value you add.
Okay, theory is great, but let's put this model to the test. Let's do a little active learning here. Imagine this, a huge wave of baby boomer auto workers all decide to retire in the same year. What do you think happens to the wages of the younger auto workers who are still on the job? What does our supply and demand model tell us?
Well, all those retirements mean there are fewer auto workers to go around, so the labor supply curve shifts to the left. The demand for auto workers from the car companies hasn't changed, but now the supply is much lower. What happens? The car companies have to compete for the workers that are left, and that competition bids up the wage. The remaining workers get a raise. It's a classic supply and demand story.
Awesome, let's try another one. Let's say some genius invents a new robot that makes every single auto worker way more productive. They can assemble cars twice as fast. Now what happens to their wages?
Okay, if the new tech makes each worker more productive, that means their marginal product of labor, the MPL, goes way up. And if the MPL goes up, the value they create, the VMPL, also goes up. Now remember, what is the demand curve for labor? It's the VMPL curve, so the whole demand curve shifts to the right. And look at the result. Not only do wages go up, but companies want to hire more workers at that new higher wage. This right here is why economists are obsessed with productivity. It's the fundamental engine of wage growth and a better standard of living for everyone.
So what's really amazing is that this whole way of thinking, supply, demand, marginal productivity, it's not just about labor. The exact same logic applies to the other factors of production we talked about at the start, land and capital.
Yep, the amount a farmer pays to rent an acre of land, or what a factory pays to lease a machine, it's all determined by the value that land or machine adds at the margin. And here's the kicker. All these factors are linked together. They don't operate in a vacuum. Think about it. If you give a worker a better tool, that's more capital, they suddenly become more productive. Their MPL goes up, which means their VMPL goes up, and our model says their wage should go up too. Everything is connected.
And this is where the model gets really powerful, because it helps us think through super complicated real-world issues like immigration. Now, this quote here lays out a perspective that comes directly from our supply and demand model. The argument is that if you increase the supply of one particular kind of labor, say low-skilled workers, that's a shift of the supply curve to the right. And our model predicts that, all else being equal, that could push down the equilibrium wage for the workers already in that market. So, the big idea to walk away with is this. Wages aren't just random numbers pulled out of thin air. They're tied directly to productivity, to the value we create. And that leads to one last really interesting question to chew on. If our model suggests that an influx of workers in one area might lower wages for those workers, who else in the economy wins? Is it the business owners, who now have lower labor costs? Is it you and me, the consumers, because the prices of the goods they make might fall? It's a great reminder that the economy is like a giant interconnected web. You pull on one string over here and you feel the vibrations everywhere else. And understanding that, well, that's what it means to start thinking like an economist.